All right, guys. Yesterday, the anniversary of the Edmund Fitzgerald. It's a story that just doesn't go away. And I think, really, the major reason for that is Gordon Lightfoot's classic song. I mean, a haunting song of that tragedy on Lake Superior, for sure.
The Gales of November, right?
Yeah. We had some gales of November today here, by the way.
Well, speaking of that, my parents, we've talked about it. They live up in Ludington now, and my mom texted me a picture of Lake Michigan up there, and she said the gales of November are here, and those waves on Lake Michigan. I mean, it looked like an ocean down here in North Carolina. So no, I saw a post from, I don't know, an Instagram account. It was like Michigan Tourism or something like that, saying the anniversary of the Edmund Fitzgerald, and they had the song playing. That is such a classic song. I don't care if you're not a Michigander, whatever. Like, that is such a cool song. But you're right, it is eerie when you know like what happened. It is kind of gives you
the song
like, weird feelings.
The song is like perfect. It gives you that eerie feeling.
I'm getting chills right now. I'm getting chills thinking about
it. The lyrics are perfect. That's storytelling.
It is.
It's a great song. Exactly why we remember it. It's a good song. 49 years. I was actually talking pre-pod, and I said, I was hoping you were going to bring up the Edmund Fitzgerald because I like to believe you're an Edmund Fitzgerald guy. Because enough of the OJ stuff. This is like I was just reading a bunch of threads on Twitter about the 49-year anniversary. Stories of when the ship launched and they couldn't break the champagne bottle on the front of the boat. Took 3 tries, and when they initially launched the boat, they had mega waves that like 10 feet high crashing into people. Guy had a heart attack, so it was doomed from the start. So I love a good Edmund Fitzgerald story. Maybe next year for the 50th year anniversary, we do a whole pod on Edmund Fitzgerald.
Ooh,
there's got to be
very good.
There's got to be some like historian out there that would just love to talk for an hour about that thing. I've always said the people who, whether it's here, we're Connecticut, people who don't know much about Michigan because they've never lived there. When this kind of stuff has come up, they don't realize how big like Lake Superior is. And they're like, what, shipwrecks in a lake? What are you talking about? It's like, no, like go look at a map. Lake Superior is really big. And the storms there are basically equivalent to, on the ocean.
Nor'easters.
So, right.
Yeah, well, it's a day that will never be forgotten, that's for sure. And I remember when it happened. And by the way, we're also recording on November 11th, and it's Veterans Day. And a salute to all the veterans out there for sure, man. They're the ones that make this country what it is. Yep. And can't say enough about all the vets and all the people in the military for sure. Well, this is episode 335 of the 3 Point Podcast, presented by the Memorial Healthcare Wellness Center for the month of November. All new veteran members will receive special discounts on 3, 6, and 12-month memberships. More info can be found at memorialhealthcare.org and on the socials at Memorial Healthcare Wellness Center. Also want to thank our starting lineup of partners that include the ALS of Michigan, AZee Branding Solutions, Jacobs Insurance Agency, Kori and Associates Real Estate Services, Nelson House Funeral Homes, Rivals Taphouse and Grille, Success Group Mortgage and Servicing, and the Shiawassee County Fair. We got a special guest on the Prep Spotlight. We're going to be talking with Morris Oriole head football coach Kendall Crockett of the Morris Orioles right after this message. All right, next on the Prep Spotlight, we have a very successful head coach of the Morris Orioles now in his 11th season. Kendall Crockett, again, has them knocking on a state championship door in the semifinals this Saturday against Britton Deerfield. First of all, Coach, welcome to the program, and congrats on your career so far, man. You're racking up a lot of wins.
Hey, thank you very much for having me and talking about Morris.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about your team a little bit. Let's just start with the fact I was doing a little bit of research, and you're a young team, right? You don't have a whole heck of a lot of seniors on the team, but you guys, it sounds like the sophomore class is pretty stacked.
Yeah, we have 3 seniors, 2 juniors, and 13 sophomores this year. So we are a very young team. The sophomores that we have that are in the lineup, they are pretty much beyond their years at this point. They're working their butts off for us. But we have 3 seniors that are really leading this thing, and 2 juniors as well that are right there with the seniors.
You mentioned a few of those seniors. Who are some of those guys? What positions do they play, and what makes them so valuable to your team?
The first 2 are the duo that we have at running back. So Joel Fisher, who has over 1,300 rushing yards, and Wyatt Cartier, who also has over 1,300 rushing yards. we had an unfortunate event where our sophomore starting quarterback broke his leg in the St. Pat's football game. So we have gone specifically back to a 2-back set for the most part and just running the ball like we have in the past. It's worked the last 2 weeks, and we're hoping that it continues to work with this Britton Deerfield team, which is about 240 pounds across the front. But our third senior, Travis Smith, is one of our senior captains who he leads our offensive line. He's one of our best defensive linemen as well. So, I mean, our seniors are leading this thing by example. They've been in the weight room all summer. They've been to all the 5-on-5s. And for the most part, they lead everything in the weight room and on the field.
Yeah. So you mentioned your guys going to all the 5-on-5s. Obviously, the difference between 8-man and 11-man football, the 11-man, those would be 7-on-7s. For people people listening that may not know much about 8-man football, can you just maybe lay out the Cliff Notes version, I guess, of the main differences as far as strategy and maybe alignments with 8-man football and 11-man? Because I feel like some people are still surprised that there's so many 8-man football schools in the state of Michigan.
Yeah, the real easy version is with your 11-man version, you have your 7 men on the offensive line or on the line of scrimmage. Right. 8-player football, we have 5. So we just take off 2 tackles or 2 of your split backs, whatever you want to call them. And you can put your offensive line any way that you want to. 11-man, you have to be a specific number to be able to be eligible for a receiver. In 8-man football, you just have to be on the end of the line of scrimmage. So in theory, you could throw it to your center if you set up an offensive formation for that to happen.
Wow.
Then you have 3 men in the backfield instead of 4. So, I mean, everything that we run, we have taken a lot of things from DeWitt, where I used to coach. We've taken a lot of things from other successful 8-man programs, and you just make things and spin things into your own, and you make it work.
Yeah. It sounds like you've made it work. That's for sure. I was going to ask, so you mentioned the center on the end of the line of scrimmage you could possibly throw. Do teams switch things up like that? I mean, you guys are basically running a 2 running back system now because of what happened with your quarterback. Do you see a lot of teams kind of run, for lack of better words, crazy offenses, or is it for the most part pretty traditional, I guess?
I would say that it's pretty traditional for most teams.
Yeah.
Most teams have a tackle to tackler, tight end to tight end set. So a 5-man front. Some people that do have a throwing quarterback, they can run a wide set, 3 offensive linemen, quarterback, 2 receivers on each side, or a trip set. But for the most part, you're seeing a standard offensive line. You have a 5-man front, 4-man front, or a 3-man front.
Cool. So it's kind of interesting to me what you're talking about, the opponent you're playing this weekend, how they're so big up front. With even less guys out there on the field, what can you do as a head coach to really help your guys? And what is the game plan kind of looking like heading into the game this weekend? It seems like that would be a very tough task to overcome, just being outsized in 8-man.
When you're outsized, you have to use speed. The one thing that we do have, and we have a lot of, is speed. We're trying to put as many packages as we can together to kind of counter the size of their offensive line, bringing backers from different angles, bringing different blitzes from outside and inside, doing some twisting with the defensive line, things like that. So anything that we can do to try to confuse their offensive linemen and give ourselves an opening for one of our linebackers is what we've been practicing so far.
You coached 11-man obviously before 8-man. Is there, on the outside looking in at 8-man, I think it sounds like it'd be a blast to coach. It seems like maybe more so than an 11-man where you have the consistency of same guys. Seems like a little bit more year after year. Seems like an 8-man, it's a little bit more turnover with what offense you're going to run to suit to your talent. Is that fair to say, where it's almost like you're overturning each year, coming up with looking at your talent and saying, what's the best offense we can run this year for this specific 15-man team? Is that a lot of what it's like, or have you been running the same thing year in and year out essentially?
We've been pretty fortunate at Morris the last 9 years. I mean, we've had really good running backs, really good offensive linemen. So we've run the same offense for the most part for those 9 years. This is the first year since we've had Nick Hart in my second season where we had a throwing quarterback that could really put it down the field 40, 50 yards. But most teams are able to stay with their traditional offense, what they have run. What we run into in the next couple of years is our numbers are going to drop off pretty quick.
Right.
So once our sophomore class goes through and those 13 are gone, our team size is going to be down to about 12 kids for a while.
Oh, wow.
So at that point, I think you just put on the field what you can put on the field to football. And it's hard to say, especially with smaller schools. We're at about 145, but there's some schools that have 90 some kids in their high school.
Wow.
And they put 13 kids on the sideline. And I mean, you run what you can run with 13 kids. I mean, if it weren't for 8-man football, some of these teams with those numbers, they're just not playing football at all. So we're fortunate to have decent numbers right now, and we hope to keep that consistent.
Have you ever happened to see, like, I was watching the Texas high school state coverage for their state finals, and they have 6-man football. Is that something you've ever happened to see? And do you have any thoughts on that?
You know, I did. I watched it, the Texas version of it.
Yeah.
So same as you. First time I watched it, it reminds me of what flag football looks like for our younger. Or I think everybody's eligible, and you can just do all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's neat to watch.
Right. Yeah, it's fascinating.
You know, Kendall, 8-man football typically is known for high-scoring offenses, but you guys have a really good defense this year. And I know Wyatt Valentine, I think he's got 9 interceptions on the year. Talk a little bit about your defense.
You know, again, we have a great defensive coordinator in Brad Long. He's been there for the last 7-8 years with me as well. And we've put this program, and the rest of the coaches have really put a lot of work into this program. And defensively, it's not a one-trick pony for him. He has about 4 or 5 defenses that he runs depending on the offense that we're going to go against. And Wyatt Valentine's just a sophomore this year, and like I said, 9 interceptions. It's a record for Morris. Our other corner, Joel Fisher, doesn't have the interceptions, but he's doing a heck of a job doing defensive back as well. But you know, the teams that are fortunate enough to have a front 3 or a front 4 are going to benefit with their linebackers and corners behind them. And this year we just happen to have what I think is probably 2 of the better defensive ends in 8-man Division II. Very skilled, very strong, hold the edge for us. And we have a sophomore in the middle, Braden Hart, who's demanding double teams, sometimes triple teams in the middle. So our defense has been extremely consistent over the last 5 years.
Which is big because, like Ted said, I know at least the little bit that I've heard and read and listened to about 8-man football, like I said, high scoring. So if you can have a defense that can keep that scoring down, I mean, that's just a huge advantage. I wanted to ask you about a hot topic that we've talked about on the podcast. It may not necessarily apply to 8-man football because to an extent, you know, you guys have to go to where the schools are. You have to travel to where your opponents are because there aren't 8-man schools, you know, around in every county necessarily. But we've talked about the playoff system in MHSAA, and you coached 11-man, so you know the sport and you know the layout with everything. What are your thoughts, maybe, you know, unofficially on the point system, or maybe how they kind of do the matchups for the districts, the regions? Do you think that they have a good system for the points, you know, and the playoff seeding and making matchups for regions and all that kind of stuff? Or do you think that there's a way that they could kind of figure something out? Maybe Jared has talked about having less divisions. Obviously you couldn't necessarily do that, like I said, in 8-man, but you know, have you ever put any thought into that? Because it's something we've talked about on the podcast quite a bit.
You know, just from the 8-man perspective, I won't talk on 11-man because I think they do a pretty good job with that.
Sure.
8-man this year, we had several teams not make the playoffs that were 7-2. One team that was 8-1 up in Cedarville.
Wow.
So just because you have an 8-1 record, I mean, if your opponent's, you know, breakdown is not going to be better than, say, an Adrian Lenawee Christian, who was 4-5 and made the playoffs, based off of those power points that they got from the teams that they did beat and the teams that beat them. For 8-player football, I think we need to add one more round just to get some of those 7-2, 8-1 teams in. I mean, I know from my perspective, if I was Cedarville at 8-1 and I didn't make the playoffs, I'd be calling the MHSA and finding out what's going on.
Right.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of consistency between an 8-man and 11-man would be appreciated from the 8-man coaches. We would love to get the opportunity to play at Ford Field. We do love the Superior Dome. It's a fantastic venue. Ford Field would also be something special for the kids because that's all they talk about is Lions football all the time.
That kind of ties into my final question for you here, Kendall. Matt kind of laid it out a little bit, and we have talked about it here on the podcast. If more and more teams end up going to 8-man, the smaller schools, it'd be, to me, I'd like your thoughts on this, maybe go 6 divisions in 11-man and then still keep the 2 and 8-man and play them all at Ford Field. What do you think of that?
I think it's a great idea, especially again from the 8-player point of view. Right. I don't see it ever happening, unfortunately. I don't think the MHSA wants to drop any of their divisions 1 through 8. They want to keep as many teams as they can in those into the playoffs, which I understand. And there's a lot of Division 8 teams that are number-wise who are getting down to that 175 level. And one that comes to mind would be like a Fowler.
Right.
An excellent powerhouse football program in Division 8, always has been, probably always will be as long as they're coaching and playing out there. But it's teams like that maybe at some point those numbers drop a little bit. And what do you do when you're fielding a team of 18 kids on 11-man? It's hard to come by and keep the consistency with them. So I would love to see that happen. Don't think it would. But like I said, for 8-player football, we love being at the Superior Dome. It's an awesome venue for us, our fans, anybody that's ever been up there and watched the 8-player state championships. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that is cool. I'm going to jump in real quick. I know, Ted, you're probably going to try and get you out of here. It's getting a little late here on a Monday night. But so kind of along those lines, it kind of made me think, what we've talked about on the podcast a lot. So previously, when I played, the early days of the playoffs, it was just you make 6 wins, you're in. 6 wins, you're in the playoffs. They obviously tried to fix that because maybe there was an issue sometimes with teams just scheduling a bunch of cupcakes to get to that 6-win mark. And now you've got the teams maybe scheduling a bunch of, I guess, the stronger opponents to build those points. But, we've kind of said when we talk about this, I don't know if it was that big of an issue. Like, do you think there were a lot of teams scheduling those cupcakes to get to 6 wins? Or now, you got a team that went 8-1 and didn't make the playoffs? And do you think that was a big issue? Or, I guess you said earlier, you think 11-man has a good system.
The biggest issue with 8-player football is going back to a team like Cedarville, who ended up going 8-1. If you look at their schedule for the previous 2 seasons, the teams that ended up having losing seasons this year have been very successful the years before that. Like I said, when it comes to the numbers of the 8-player football game, you may have 25 kids last year and end up with 15 kids the next year and lose 10 seniors. So you can never judge or base anything off the previous season on how good you're going to be the next season when you're losing 10 kids, 12 kids, 8 seniors, whatever it may be.
Right.
It varies so much from year to year. Right. And the 8-player teams, it's hard to have a consistent schedule and know who's going to be good every single year. You have your traditional powers. You have North Powers. You have Crystal Falls, Forest Park. Marion's been good. Deckerville's always good. Adrian Lenaway's been good for the last 7 years. Climax, Mendon, all those teams. You have your traditional teams that have been good, but you don't know what you're going to have from year to yeyear.
Yeah. Well, a lot of those teams you mentioned were, real powerhouses in 11-man football in Division 8, right? They just still have that tradition. And what you've done over at Morris has been really astounding to me. The program completely turned around to some down years prior to going to 8-man. 88-24 overall record. You got the state championship you had in 2018, and you talked a little bit about. We'll end it here. You talked a bit about how the Morris fans like going up to the Superior Dome up there in Marquette. Talk a little bit about the fan support here that you get at Morris for your games, especially at Field of Dreams, and the main man himself, my good buddy Andy Flynn.
Well, when we first started making the Field of Dreams, I mean, it was just a bunch of people that lived in Morris. A few of them had kids that were actually in middle school or in elementary school at that time, and they just all got together, started doing some fundraising to get that field going. So we have always had a great support for our football team from the Morris community itself. And everything that we do, it doesn't matter where we travel to when we get to playoff time, we're going to have a good following. We'll have a boatload of people going down to Britton Deerfield on Saturday to see us. And, with Andy Flynn, Andy's been doing it for forever. And he supports everything Morris related. He's always been fantastic for us. He's always been fantastic for me. He's actually the athletic director that hired me 11 years ago.
Right.
So he's always supported me. He does our stats every single Friday or Saturday night with a couple of his buddies. And you know what? I can't say enough good things about Andy.
Yeah, I asked him to send me over a couple things. He sent me a boatload of stuff that he's compiled on the Morris Orioles. Every school should have somebody like Andy. Well, I'll tell you what, Kendall, we appreciate you taking the time out. I know you got a big week in front of you, big road trip down to Britton Deerfield, and we want to wish you the best of luck and congratulations so far and what you're doing over there in Oriole country.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you guys very much.
Jacobs Insurance Agency has served Shiawassee County and the surrounding areas since 1977. Just like 3 Point Podcast, we've had 3 generations, Gary Jacobs Sr., Gary Jacobs II, Brian Jacobs, and myself, Noah Jacobs, serving our community, with offices in Waterford and Owasso on M21, just west of Home Depot. Stop in or go online to jacobsinsurance.com to get a quote or get your questions answered by our team. Jacobs Insurance is a proud supporter of our local schools and the proud sponsor of the Prep Spotlight. Insure everything, local, independent, and trusted. It's our family working together to protect yours. That's the Jacobs way.
All right, good words there from the Jacobs Insurance Agency, our sponsor of the Prep Spotlight. And that was a fun conversation with Kendall Crockett of the Morris Orioles. So we'll get into some of the games from last week. Before we do, I just want to send a shout out to the family of Gary Schooley. Gary Schooley passed away here recently at the age of 84. He was a longtime coach, volunteer, ran Corunna rec program for a lot of years. Good guy. I always remember seeing him as the right-hand man for Frank Davis, at the scorers table, helping Davis coach the team. He'll be missed for sure. Gary Schooley, a Corunna legend. But not so legendary was Corunna's game against Pontiac Notre Dame Prep on Friday night. The Cavs just jumped into too big a hole to even come out of. They lost 56-7. Prep scored 36 second quarter points, led Corunna 56-0 at the half. Couple bright spots. Caden Cowdery got the Cavs their only touchdown in the fourth quarter on a 3-yard run, finished with 66 on the ground, 4 of 6 passing. But the Irish definitely came into that game with revenge on their mind after losing last year, 28-17. They may have been, who knows, the second or third best team in that division last year, but Corunna took it to them. And I expect Notre Dame probably to make it to Ford Field. They got a big game against Armada this Friday night or Saturday. I'm not sure what day the game is, but they're a good team, man. They're good.
Yeah. Now we talked about it last week. One of our listeners, followers, said Corunna can't fall behind early. And, you laid it out right there. That's exactly what happened. So trying to play catch up versus a team as good as, Notre Dame Prep. I mean, it's a tall hill to climb. And, sometimes you just run into a buzzsaw. I mean, Corunna did that to a couple teams in the playoffs last year. A team in the playoffs and you're beating them by 40, 50 points is just kind of crazy. So sometimes, you just run into a team that's bound for a state championship. Just what happens.
Yeah, we've seen it a couple times. A number of years back, Frankenmuth, put up a lot of points on Corunna, and I think maybe
when Sexton back.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, we bet a few of these in playoffs. They suck, man. You never want your season to end that way.
Right.
You want to remember the good times. I know they were dealing with some injuries that definitely didn't help. that's just a good squad
Yep.
and a good program, and it's unfortunate. You just move on to next year. What can you do, really?
Absolutely. And the seniors on the team this year, they finished 8-3 this year after last year's 13-1 state runner-up performance. So they'll have a lot to look back on their high school career for sure. In other games, Lansing Catholic over Ovid Elsie 31-28. The Marauders fought back from a 21-point deficit, but mistakes prevented OE from moving on to the regional. Trace Tokar, last time we'll probably be talking about him on the podcast, maybe until spring and track. Finished his grid career with just under 200 yards rushing with a couple of touchdowns. He was 7-11 passing for 111 yards, 2 more touchdowns. So he at least closed it out in fine fashion, just came up just short.
Like LTC is having some wild games in the first 2 rounds of playoffs. So it'll be fun to see how they play out the rest of the way. And it sounds like every game is I use Last Chance U a lot, but it sounds like every one of these games is from like the Last Chance U TV show drama every week.
Yep, absolutely. A team we're going to be following, Fowler Eagles. They downed Saginaw Michigan Lutheran Seminary 43-13. Jake Hoffman completed 11 of 13 passes for 225 yards. They're going to take on Harbor Beach on Saturday at the Fowler Eagle Nest. So that ought to be a pretty good game there. Fowler ranked number 1 in the AP poll in Division 8, and Harbor Beach tied for 2nd. So it's going to be a heck of a matchup there, and Z92.5 will be carrying that one. And we already talked about the Morris Orioles, 46-14 over Mount Pleasant Sacred Heart. The O's picked up their 4th regional title in the last 7 years. Joel Fisher led the way. Kendall Crockett talked about him. He had 227 yards and 3 touchdowns. Wyatt Cartier had just under 100 yards and 2 more touchdowns. So good luck to the Orioles as they get ready for semifinal appearance down there at Britton Deerfield.
It's pretty crazy. Coach Crockett said about the injury they had at the quarterback position. Kid was only a sophomore, so hopefully, he's going to heal up well and he's going to be back for a couple of years for Morris. But that, you don't think about, it happens sometimes even in 11-man, but if you don't necessarily have a backup quarterback, but definitely in 8-man football, that quarterback you're playing might be the only guy that can play quarterback. You just go to a 2-back system. You just put 2 running backs back there and you just say, listen, we're running the ball 60 times and that's what's going to happen.
Was that single wing? Is that what that is called? The 2.
What they're running wing.
Yeah. Single wing. Yeah. That's football right there. That's football. I also thought it was fascinating. Maybe we can, wrap up the preps segment maybe after this, but it was fascinating hearing him talk about the team that was 8-1. I'm blanking on the school's name as of this moment, but that was 8-1 getting left out of the playoffs. That's mind-boggling. I mean, we talk a lot about that 11-man. It is almost like the 8-man is kind of a forgotten level of football. I'm telling you, watch those Texas high school broadcasts in those 6-man games. It is awesome. It's good football being played, and there's good football being played in 8-man. I'm with him. Let's bring those 8-man games to Ford Field. It seems like they're getting left out of a lot of the fun. In my opinion, I get a lot of those schools are UP schools, but who the hell doesn't want to play at Ford Field?
Yeah, I mean, obviously a big thing with that would be logistics, I guess. Like when are they gonna? The Thanksgiving weekend is already pretty full, So obviously that would be a big part, unless they don't add another round of playoffs and they just do it the weekend before, or something like that. But that obviously would be a discussion. But yes, it would be cool to see those games at Ford Field.
Right. One more football related topic, and then I'll wrap it up with a final thought. Let's do it right here. Connor Stallions at Belleville. I mean, what on earth is going on? He leaves Mumford. He's there. Was either head coach or assistant coach. He was their defensive coordinator, right?
Right.
I've never heard of a story like that. Coaching one team and then jumping ship to the best team in the state and riding it. I do think he's probably a pretty decent offensive coordinator compared to most high school offensive coordinators. So I think it's probably an upgrade, but Belleville already has 2 head coaches coaching simultaneously, which I've never heard of that to begin with. Now it just seems like a crazy situation for the number 1 quarterback to be trying to develop under. I think they're going to overcome it because they're that good, but man, it just seems like chaos week in, week out over there.
Well, doesn't that raise flags on shakiness there with his Michigan ties and
I don't understand
Wolverines trying?
Matt, what do you think of that? What is the Michigan? I don't understand why would Michigan be like, we're going to send Stallions to I don't, what am I missing?
Why especially because you would think Michigan is, especially right now, because, in theory, the NCAA stuff is still pending. They haven't necessarily like closed everything with the whole Stallions and the Harbaugh stuff. That's still, they still say the investigation is still going on. So you would think that Michigan and Sharon Moore and everyone is like distancing themselves from Connor Stallions. And they want to be like, no, he has nothing to do with the Michigan football program. You would think that's what they're doing. So, right, to say like, hey, Connor, go get involved with Belleville and kind of recruit, Bryce Underwood, sell the program to him. I hope Sharon Moore wouldn't be dumb enough to dip his toes into that, because, if all of a sudden, boom, next week, Bryce Underwood flips to Michigan, people are going to be like, whoa, wait, he all of a sudden flips to Michigan and Connor Stallions just went over there last week. Like, what's going on here?
That would blow my mind if Michigan had anything whatsoever to do with it. I think it's just Stallions is such a Michigan guy. He made it clear in that documentary. He loves the University of Michigan.
Right.
I like to imagine Sharon Moore was recruiting Bryce and said, "I'm going to give you my best guy, and he's going to help win you guys a state title. I know you guys are struggling a little bit. You lost to Howell. I'm sending my best guy to take care of you guys." It just is. It's fascinating, man. It's been a fascinating year. His story has been interesting to follow.
Insane.
It's going to be fun to watch down the stretch.
Absolutely.
You go from everything that happened at Michigan to you land with quite possibly the worst program in Detroit, and then now you're coaching the number one recruit, not just in Michigan, in the whole country. It's just like,
I wonder. Like, I am fascinated by it. Like, did he come in with his own offense and say, "All right, we're revamping everything. Throw the old playbook in the trash," or did he come in and like just start running their offense? How did that go about? Might have to find some answers out about that.
Look into that for us, Jared. Little assignment for you. Look into it and bring it on the next pod.
We need to find this guy's contact information. Can we get this guy and interview him? Prep Spotlight next week.
Why not? Let's do it.
It's wild.
All right, let's call it a spotlight again. Thanks to the Jacobs Insurance Agency. We appreciate their sponsorship. And again, good stuff there, boys. Look forward to wrapping up the football playoffs. All right, we'll be right back. Boy, should we talk a little Detroit Lion football? That Sunday night game was one for the ages, man. We'll talk about that right after this. All right, guys, we all had our little text thread going last night. Sunday night football, the Lions and the Texans. Lions were playing terrible in that first half. Jared Goff, 4 picks, including a Hail Mary, finished with 5 interceptions. But I think all three of us knew if they hung close, and especially after Dan Campbell had that little recorded spot that the timing was just perfect where they start the second half with an interception, you just had a feeling. I know we all did, that they might pull this out, or at least it was going to be close. And it was one of the more fantastic finishes I've seen in a long time. It just shows this team.
Right. I mean, it shows that this team, everyone was saying it this morning on all the talk shows and all the clips that you see from, podcasts or radio shows or whatever, that this is what shows this team is a championship caliber team. To have a game where your quarterback throws 5 interceptions and you still come back and win, it's just incredible. I did definitely feel like the Lions could still come back, but I'll be honest, not necessarily the way that they did. I mean, the main reason I thought was because their offense all season has just been unstoppable, basically. So I was like, hey, if Goff can just stop throwing the ball away, they could probably keep up with the Texans and it could be a 49-47 win or something like that. But it was the complete opposite. The defense pitched a shutout in the second half.
Yeah.
And I mean, the defense, CJ Stroud looked amazing in the first half, and he didn't do anything in the second half, and they turned him over a couple times. So yeah, I mean, it just shows that this team, you hear the phrase complementary football. This team is the definition of complementary football, all the way down to Jake Bates, banging in those field goals. I mean, every phase, Jared Goff is not going to have another game like that the rest of the season. So that's the one outlier game for him. And the defense did what they needed to, and they got the win on the road. I mean, it was nothing short of amazing.
We knew they were due for a dud. And it's amazing when you have a dud and you still win.
Yeah.
Buy the Super Bowl tickets now, Uncle Ted. I don't know what you're waiting for. it's time to go. This is the year. Get it locked in. It's time to do it. They're doing this. They're doing this. That's where I'm at with the Lions. And when you start hearing the national, pundits like Colin Cowherd throwing out, it seems like the Kansas City Chiefs and the Detroit Lions are on a collision course headed toward the Super Bowl. Once they start saying it, once that narrative's out there, it seems like it just happens.
Yeah.
So it's just amazing how good the Lions freaking are. I never lost belief. I never really panicked. To me, that's a game where you bury the film if you're a Lions, if you're Dan Campbell, if you're Jared Goff. I don't know what you take from it, good or bad. You take from it that you have a team that will never stop fighting no matter what. Other than that, I think you just bury it. The good, the bad, the defense played outstanding. That's the best I've seen a Detroit Lions team play for a half of football, honestly, probably in my life. Name one other time. Maybe there was a Ndamukong Suh game that we played well, but my God, 0 points for CJ Stroud, a 6-3 Texans team off a bye week at home. That was Aaron Glenn. He just got a coaching job from that game on the national spotlight. It was awesome. We know that feeling that Texans fans must have had. We experienced that versus the 49ers last year. That helpless feeling where you have no momentum and you just can't get that one play to put the game away. I don't know. Stroud I thought we had a very good game plan, especially on all the bootlegs that they would do. I thought our defensive line did a great job keeping him contained for the most part. He made a couple amazing plays out of the pocket because that's CJ Stroud. But I thought the game plan was very good. I think this defense maybe took it a little bit like a slap in the face when everybody just assumed they were going to take a big step down when Aiden Hutchinson left. They're definitely not quite what they were with Hutch, but my God, they played damn well. How can you play any better than what they did in yesterday's game? Just awesome win.
Right. And, they rested Smith. They gave him his bye week. I was kind of on the fence on that. I wasn't quite sure about that. But, yeah, I mean, he has ultimate respect for Campbell for doing that. He's talked about it. He said he played the game. He realizes it. They got by without him. He's definitely going to add some help there. Another guy on the defense that I'm so impressed with is McNeil. I mean, in the middle there, he's as good as it gets in the NFL. So, it wasn't that long ago, guys. Was it a couple of years ago? We saw signs last year that defense was improved, but 2 years ago they were pathetic. And now I think really they're one of the best defenses in the NFL.
I mean, you had Collinsworth last night on the call saying that Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch is the best two safeties in the league.
Yeah.
And like you said, McNeil has stepped up, and Jack Campbell, actually, I've seen like the Pro Football Focus, all those crazy. Some people don't take Pro Football Focus that seriously, but they obviously do their analysis. Jack Campbell's rated as one of the best linebackers in the NFC. He's on the field every single play. He's not making all those big splash, crazy plays, but he's just like a solid linebacker. Like, he's just out there making tackles, doing what he has to do. Obviously, Brian Branch mentioned him. Carlton Davis had the 2 interceptions last night. Once Smith gets in there on defense and kind of cleans up the defensive end spot a little bit, not that they were that bad, but I don't know, again, where there's a hole on this defense. I mean, you never want to lose someone like Hutchinson, but I mean, this defense has it all. And now you got Jake Bates out there that looks like, one of the best kickers in the league, his awesome story, and he's just knocking down kicks all over the place. Like you said, Jared, the national people are starting to say that, because even last year when the Lions, obviously at this point in the season, looked really good, I feel like the national people weren't really taking them that seriously. They'd mention them and be like, yep, those Lions, but then it'd go back to, the 49ers and the Packers, whoever else in the NFC, the Rams. But now, I mean, people are buying those Super Bowl tickets, for the Lions. And I don't know if I like that, when you're telling Ted to buy the tickets. I'm like, don't do it yet. Don't do it yet.
That was the team of destiny win. That's how I'm viewing it.
Right.
I don't know how else you view that. That was, you could not, like Jared Goff. That was he drunk? I don't know what was going on with him. The one throw, obviously there were some weird ones, a couple tip balls, but the one deep ball he threw to JMO in the third quarter, that was just like he blatantly covered.
Yeah,
that was so uncharacteristic of Goff. He was trying to make it all back in one throw.
Right.
I actually thought this was Ben Johnson. I mean, he was my favorite quote of a quarterback all time is Sam Darnold when he was quote unquote seeing ghosts on the field from the NFL mic'd up from like 3-4 years ago with the Jets. But Ben Johnson, I thought he called maybe one of his best games. I actually thought, and agreed. I thought they should have came out a little bit stronger with the run, especially with Montgomery. The first few drives was Gibbs center, where sometimes I just like to see him bludgeon teams with Montgomery. And it felt like they needed to set that edge. And it took them a while to kind of figure that out. But I thought Ben Johnson, with a quarterback who was seeing ghosts, had a few like money play calls. The one that really sticks out to me is when I think it was a 3rd and 6, third quarter on our touchdown drive, or it might have been our very last touchdown drive, where 3rd and 6, we were in our own red zone, and we ran like a little swing pass to Jahmyr Gibbs where he pulled Penny Sewell around the edge. And it's he had a couple of those plays dialed up where it was just a great play call.
Yep.
He uses Sewell in as many ways as he possibly can. It's amazing how much of an athlete Sewell is, and he's always on the perimeter pancaking guys, it seems like. I'm so happy to be a Lions fan. We have the best coordinators arguably in the league. We have the most likable head coach in the league. This team is the definition of you just love everybody. I mean, Jake Bates, maybe the most likable kicker in the game, which I think is half the battle. If your teammates like you, they'll probably live a little bit more with a few misses, which eventually are going to inevitably come. But who's not rooting for Jake Bates? It's awesome. So what more can you say? It's the team of destiny, man. It's time to get ready for the Super Bowl. Win the next few games, secure that 1 seed, and let's go win a Super Bowl.
Amen. Hey, how about you brought up JMO? I mean, coming off the 2-game layoff, how about three great catches, I think, and he came in with a reputation, maybe not being the best pass catcher, but man, he's coming up clutch.
Oh, he made a couple tough catches too, and got lit up, got hit pretty hard a couple times. So no, I mean, we were talking about the defense, and the offense is the same way. It really does feel like that the only thing that can stop them, they've already had a major injury, obviously, but the only thing that could stop them is a major injury.
Like to Goff. If Goff goes down,
obviously,
that's going to be tough.
Right. You don't want to
Why even speak that?
Okay,
that's
it's a fact.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like that's where it feels like that's the only thing that could stop them is what it feels like right now. Because if they're fully healthy heading into the playoffs, especially with home field advantage throughout, and they're at Ford Field all the way to the Super Bowl. I don't know who could beat them. The Rams are playing better. 49ers have McCaffrey back, but they've been scuffling a little bit. I don't know who you would like bet against the Lions if they got matched up with the Bucks again. I don't know, not necessarily. The Falcons with Kirk Cousins are probably going to win that division. So like you go through the teams in the NFC, and it's just kind of like none of these teams really like worry me all that much.
They have the best team in the NFC. You still got to win the games, but they got the best team in the NFC. I think that's proven. So, still got to get there though.
You got to get there though.
One play that I'll just like, D'Amico Ryans. I kind of like. It's funny those coaches, man, where they just every time they cut to him, he's not saying anything. Stoic. Whether they're up by 23-6 or tied 20-20, same expression. The one play that I was like, what the hell are they doing? Let me make sure I get this right. So 3rd and 6, Houston 48-yard line, 1 minute, 40 seconds to go. Everybody in the entire world knows it's going to Amon-Ra. And Chris Collinsworth even calls it out right before the snap. They didn't even cover him. They did not even cover Amon-Ra on the biggest play of the game. He ran a little screw route for 11 yards. I mean, am I crazy? Like, I know we don't know anything about coaching, but for the love of God, what the hell was going on in that play?
Right. Yeah, there's some plays where it would be like, on this play, double team this guy, because that's exactly where Goff is going to go. Again, obviously, that's where coaching comes in, because maybe Ben Johnson drew something up that got him open. But yeah, I mean, it's they're pushing all the right buttons. Their coordinators, obviously Aaron Glenn, like you said, Ted, the Lions defense. Aaron Glenn maybe was not on a hot seat, but people were questioning if he's the right defensive coordinator. He sure seems to be. He's probably going to be a head coach probably pretty soon. So
I'm here in New Orleans probably next year.
Yeah, right.
Do you guys think, like, I know we're going to love every second of this year, but how much of a step down do you think this team would take if we lost both Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson next year? Are you like to the point where it's like win now, or how big of a deal do you think those two guys really are?
I mean, I definitely think in the NFL, it's always win now, because you just never know what's going to happen. Not to discredit Aaron Glenn, but I feel like hiring a solid defensive coordinator is maybe a little easier than what Ben Johnson's doing, with the creativity and the play calling. And like you said, adjusting. The Texans were stopping the run, so they started just going to the outside. They said, Gibbs, just get to the outside every time. So finding an offensive coordinator with that kind of mind might not be as easy, but If you lose someone like Aaron Glenn, because the other part of it too isn't just scheme, it's like the culture in the locker room, and those dudes seem to really love Aaron Glenn. So that would be a big loss, because you saw Terrion Arnold last night got a little banged up on one play, and when he was walking off the field, Aaron Glenn just had his arm around him and clearly was saying, probably like, we need you out there, whatever he was saying to him. So stuff like that is probably more of a loss than like the X's and O's.
He's just a cool cat. I don't know how else to explain it. Their whole
little
staff
chin
kinda is
beard
like,
going.
Yeah, like what their outfits they wear on the sideline, like, they are just a cool staff. They are cool guys. Like, and Aaron Glenn, I love the post game. Dan, like, the best video every week is Dan Campbell locker room speech.
Oh yeah,
Aaron Glenn comes in. I love this team.
Right.
Who doesn't want to play for that guy? It's just I can't wait to talk about the Lions again in one calendar week, about how awesome they are. Knock on wood. Go ahead.
Right.
No, I was just going to say we should savor every second of the Detroit Lions in this era that we're in right now. Hopefully it leads to a Super Bowl this year, Super Bowl appearance at the very least.
Yeah.
Match up against the Chiefs would be unbelievable.
That'd be awesome.
That's where I'm at. Like, obviously I want to win a Super Bowl. And maybe I'd feel differently if we lost a heartbreaker in the Super Bowl. But
Right.
I'm at the point, make it to the Super Bowl. I see the Lions in the Super Bowl. The rest is gravy. It's kind of where I'm at with this regime. I mean, it's hard to win a damn Super Bowl. Look at the 49ers.
Right.
So if this current, if this 5-6 year window, however long it is, maybe 1 year, if they can just make a Super Bowl appearance, they did their job in my book.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just a team of destiny, the way that they are. I've never seen a team, especially in the NFL, this close, and it starts with Campbell and the assistant coaches, everybody that has bought into it. And by the way, speaking of bought into it, I did before the weekend, I looked to see how much Super Bowl tickets are, and it's very difficult. It's very difficult to figure out how to really get a ticket. You go through like a ticket service thing. The cheapest ticket I could find is like $5,000, man. If me and my wife go, that's $10,000.
I don't get it. I don't get it.
I don't
it's
either.
Just become so like corporatized.
Yeah.
Is that a word? But it's a bunch of corporations buying all the tickets and then giving them to their clients, or using them as sales pitches, or just super rich people that want to say they're at the Super Bowl.
It would be cool, and it probably would go to like season ticket holders first.
Yes.
It would be cool if each team got maybe 5,000 tickets apiece. You go into a lottery, and real true fans get to go.
Yes.
Again, we probably still never would go. I would assume that would be like season ticket holders first, but something. It's a shame that you always we've had a zillion Lions fans in our life say, when they make it, I'm gonna go. Everyone's made that promise, and it's just not feasible anymore.
Well, I got to figure in mind, if I am going down there, and I would probably suck it up if I absolutely had to for $3,000 a piece. Okay, that's kind of my line. 5,000, a little salty, man. That's $4 more grand.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, especially when you have to add on all the other expenses that go into making the trip down there and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's part of it.
I would love a boots on the ground. That would be the best 3-point pod episode we've done. If you, man, I'm gonna keep pressuring you to do it, because I mean that's a once in a lifetime thing. It'd be cool to hear your thoughts on it. I'd like to hear your 30-minute recap. I
am working all the angles that I can, boys. I'm signing up for every contest. Bud Light has a contest. I'm signing up for them all. I'm also got friends that are season ticket holders for the Lions. They do get a kind of a first dib in a lottery. So if there's somebody that I happen to know doesn't go to the game, I'd flat out say right now, I'll pay you for your tickets.
Would you? Okay. Would you sell your Tiger Stadium seats, let's say $1,000 a piece, to make up that difference and go to a game? There you go. That's how you make it up. That's how
I thought you were gonna make it a little easier on me and trade my Tiger Stadium seats for tickets. Maybe I'd do that.
I don't know. Those Tiger Stadium seats are pretty cool. I don't know if are they worth $5,000, for Super Bowl tickets or whatever. That'd be more a nostalgia trade-off, but it would be pretty cool. But you always hear about the Super Bowl. People say bucket list item, sports bucket list item, but then you hear people say like, actually the in-game Super Bowl experience isn't necessarily that great because it's a bunch of fans of other teams, or it's people who don't even really care about the game, or it's people there to see the halftime show, or it's just like a big corporate event basically. So,
and I would feel terrible if they lost and you went. I don't know if I can stomach that for you.
That would be the ultimate. That'd be the ultimate stab in the heart. because it would be a bucket list. And the whole point is to go see the Lions in the Super Bowl, but to see them lose, walking out of there. And I'm going, where'd my 10 grand go?
Imagine if it's like the Broncos Super Bowl, Broncos Seahawks Super Bowl from like where it's over literally in a flash. I can't imagine. I would feel terrible.
Real quick before we move on, and this can be real quick.
Yeah.
Before we move on to a couple other things. Did you see the halftime show announcement for Thanksgiving down at Ford Field?
I'm glad you brought that up.
I'm sure, Jared, I'm sure you know who he is. I just want to ask, Ted, do you know who Shiawassee is?
Well, first of all, no. And when I saw the name Shiawassee, I go, what in the heck? Then all of a sudden I see he's a country artist. So that's all I know.
He's one of those like kind of country
rapper.
Right. He does rap. He does some R&B,
How does his hit song, a bar song, is what it's called, or in parentheses, Tipsy. How does this song go? I don't want to play it. Maybe we'll get copywritten, but that's a big hit. That's like his only song he has. These halftime shows, man, are laughable. Yeah. We need to strike. I mean, what was it? Was it 1 or 2 years ago? It was Jack Harlow, and the stage literally looked like Matt. Like
it was last year. I was there. It was last.
That's what it looked like. Yeah, we got to figure that out. I don't know. The Lions are bringing in serious dough, I would think.
Right.
It just is,
especially for Thanksgiving. It seems like it's something they could do. I don't know if do like it was an election year. They do all these polls and they do all put out some like poll, and ask like, what do we want? Do you want a current? Because he probably is one of the hottest artists right now because of that song. Or do we want to just like get someone that everyone likes, who's going to be at the game?
If I was Roger Goodell, I'd be like, hey, we love having you guys on Planned Thanksgiving, but we're doing you a favor. I mean, especially for the last 50 years where you guys were absolutely terrible. Put on a show. I mean, for the God's sakes, put on a damn show. We're not asking for much. We're giving you this national platform every year. Like,
think about the one that everyone talks about. And we talked about that their little reunion tour this year. Think about when Creed was at the Cowboys halftime show. Like, do something like that. Even if people like think Creed is corny, but it's going to be like this big old huge awesome show. And now people still share those clips of that show to this day. So I don't think people are sharing Jack Harlow halftime show from last year, except to make fun of it. So.
Zero. Jerry Jones. I was gonna say Jerry World. Jerry Jones gets it. Like they had the Jonas Brothers a couple years ago. They had the Dolly Parton thing. I think last year. Yeah, it's like a story every year. Had they announced? It's Wilson. What's her name?
Gretchen Wilson.
No,
Lainey. Oh, Lainey.
Lainey Wilson. Yeah. She's good. She's got some good music, so that's a solid.
Oh yeah, she's an A-lister in country music. Top of the dogs, right there, man. Yeah. What's Detroit got to do?
Right.
I mean, has he ever done it at Thanksgiving?
That would be depressing, actually. I don't know why I don't want him to do it, but something about it because of it's like Jack Harlow, Big Sean, Shiawassee. Yeah. Then all of a sudden we have Eminem. Right. Like. Just get something a little better. I'm not asking for the A+ lister like an Eminem. Just something better than Shiawassee. I mean, he's got one song.
Shiawassee. I just like the name.
It is a very good name. Very good name.
All right, let's. We're going a little long. I was going to do a Tedtertainment tonight, but we'll talk a little Michigan football, and then I got one comment on a show that came back, Yellowstone. But talk Michigan football a little bit. Jared, you almost called it. They almost pulled the upset. 20-15 they lost. Didn't quite play well enough. But again, I don't know, guys. I mean, I'm not sure. Sharon Moore, I understand the whole point about giving him another year, but in-game decisions,
right?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
It's getting tough because, the early return, we were the ones wanting to fire Dan Campbell, a few years ago.
We made a comment or two.
Right. We may have thrown that out there or something like that. But like you could see like he was building a culture, but the side that wasn't working was some of that in-game stuff. So it was like, all right, he's building the locker room. Speaking of Dan Campbell, but the in-game stuff, it was like, this guy's never really been a head coach. Is that ever going to come together? Obviously now we know it has. So Sharon Moore, he had the success last year in those games that he stepped in as a head coach, But again, we've talked about it enough. I still feel like it hasn't been talked about enough, publicly. That was still Jim Harbaugh's team. So yes, Sherrone Moore was the acting head coach in those games, but that was still, Jim Harbaugh's team. That was that culture. And it just feels like this team, I mean, off the record, we've talked about stuff that's gone on the sidelines and stuff like that. And it just seems like they don't have a clear-cut JJ McCarthy, Blake Corum type of leader. So you just wonder, like, okay, cool. It seems like he's a good recruiter and all that kind of stuff, but like, is he going to be able to build a team the way that Jim Harbaugh did, the way that Nick Saban has, Kirby Smart, also all these other guys, Urban Meyer, at all his stops? Like, will Sherrone Moore be able to do that? In addition to the in-game coaching stuff that you're talking about, Ted, not calling timeouts, weird challenges that everyone knows aren't going to be successful. The play calling. I mean, I'm just sick of them throwing Alex Orji in for random plays and it just not working. Like, altogether, it seems like this season is just a complete mess.
Yeah. I mean, do you think our listeners are sick of us talking about it, or are
Probably.
they? I'm sure the state fans are probably like, "This is great." Every single week. It's disappointing. It was such a great example of what this team is. Defensive line plays great, 4 sacks. They're mauling Indiana all game. Disappointing play calls. Offense is impossibly bad.
Right.
They can't even run the ball. 35 rushes for roughly 60 yards. What? This team has lost everything that made them so good. And I know they lost a lot of talent, but my God, just the edge, sometimes being able to run the ball is an identity. It is a mindset. I think Iowa, like, is Iowa's players that much better than Michigan? Like, they run the ball consistently every year. They can run the ball.
Right.
Well, the one thing I will say in Sherrone's defense, everyone's making a big deal out of the whole timeout thing at the very end. One, I don't know what the hell he was doing. I don't think anybody did. Either I somewhat understood the plan of we're just going to try to give up this first down, but it just wasn't going to work. I don't think
either call it right away or let it go.
Right. Just entirely let it go. It was like his brain broke for a second. Yeah. But managing the clock is freaking impossible. It seems like for all these head coaches.
Yeah.
I even think about Curt Cignetti. Right before that, Indiana had the ball with, I think, 2:30 left on a third down. Probably weren't going to get it. It was like 3rd and long before they ended up kicking that final field goal. And they had like 25 seconds on the play clock when they snapped it.
Yeah.
So Curt Cignetti, who's a great coach, just made a blunder on the clock a minute before that. It just happens to all these coaches. Dan Campbell, happens to all these damn guys. It's an easy thing to point at, but there's a zillion things we can point at with this Michigan program. Another thing that bothers me, was it Gary Danielson was the color guy for the game? Yeah. Is that right? Yeah. He had a great point. Michigan has not completed a pass for more than 37 yards this year.
Wow.
That is mind-boggling. That's like a wing tee offense. Not even a wing tee offense. That's not an offense at all. Even a wing tee, you hit a few deep bombs off a play-action pass. What are they doing? Think about the Denard Robinson offenses of yesteryear. He couldn't throw a lick. Davis Warren's a much better passer than Denard Robinson was. They would make big chunk plays in the passing game. Right. There's no way you're going to dink and dunk, 3 3rd and longs on a single drive with Davis Warren. You have to take some serious shots. They never take shots. I know they don't have the deep threat, like a Nico Collins that can, take the top off the defense. Samaj Morgan has some speed. Let's game plan. Let's play call. Let's Ben Johnson this damn squad. And let's scheme a couple of these guys open. It's college football. There's defensive breakdowns every other snap, it feels like.
Right.
And this is the only offense in the country that's not taking advantage of it. Have you ever seen an offense that just doesn't throw the ball deep?
No.
It's 1920s. It's amazing.
And they might as well run the Morris Orioles single wing. I don't know.
Yeah, right. Well, and that's the problem too, is that they're not, like you said, they only had 60 yards or whatever rushing against Indiana. So they can't even really do that because the offensive line is not performing well at all. It seems like, when you watch the games, there's obviously been breakdowns, and Davis Warren, great story. I'm sure he's a hard worker, good kid, all that kind of stuff. But it's clear he probably shouldn't be starting at Michigan, he probably should be starting in the MAC or, the American Athletic, the AAC, something like that. And that's not a shot at him. He's still a high level quarterback. It's just like he's missing throws that last year with JJ McCarthy, he was throwing darts to all these guys. And when it was 3rd and 9, when JJ McCarthy, it felt like, oh, he's going to pick this up because he's going to roll out and he's going to hit Loveland and it's going to be a first down or, whatever. So, and maybe that's like to the defense of the coaches. Maybe they're just kind of handcuffed because of quarterback play and offensive line play. I don't want to give them any credit, but because it seems like when you watch the games, the guys are out there fighting, because you could, at this point in the season, you could tell if a team was kind of checked out. They'd be getting run off the field, and they were in it. They were in a battle with, Indiana, a team that's probably going to be in the playoffs. So that's where it feels like coaching is letting them down. You can put guys in, like Kendall Crockett said in the prep spotlight, you put your players in position to succeed. Their quarterback goes down. So it's not like they're going to make some kid try to play quarterback. It's just like, our quarterback's down. We're going to a 2 running back system, and it seems like Michigan is still trying to like figure it out or something. And at this point, they've got Northwestern, which if you lose to Northwestern at home, you might be saying fire Sherrone Moore. So hopefully you beat Northwestern, and then you got Ohio State, and you just better not get boat raced by Ohio State.
Something to ask ourselves honestly, and I thought about this today. Jim Harbaugh was just on the Pat McAfee show, and he said Jesse Minter is going to be a head coach in the NFL in 2024.
Right.
Yep.
So thinking about that, all the talent we lost. I mean, Mike Sanders still is having a hell of a year in the NFL. Outside of, we know all the other talent they freaking had on that team. Are our expectations too high? Are we not fair? I think we are fair. I mean, goddamn, we're not asking you to win a national title this year.
Right.
We're asking you to be serviceable, not make glaring coaching mistakes. Like, they lost. Basically, what I'm saying is they lost so much. They lost 3 head coaches on their staff, with McDonald, Harbaugh, who's a Hall of Famer, and soon to be Jesse Minter, on a college staff. I mean, that was amazing. It's amazing staff.
Right.
And we're just expecting them to keep, rolling along as usual. What is your guys' expectation? What should our expectations be heading into next year? I don't think it can be a national championship year in and year out. We will never catch that lightning in a bottle again. I don't. At least I'll be amazed if we do. That was a Hall of Fame staff with a Hall of Fame roster.
Hall of Fame year.
Everything we had to win.
Yeah, I mean,
we're not a national championship perennial contender, are we? Maybe you guys think we are with NIL.
We should be a playoff contender for sure.
Yeah,
with the 12-team playoff, especially.
Yeah, I mean, you got Michigan with the brand that they have. You ought to be able to get the best there is out there in coaches. You just look at Indiana's coach. Comes from James Madison, brings 10 players with him. Unbelievable that they're big time players and performing. It's that simple to start to make a good program. I mean, Michigan figured it out when they brought Harbaugh in. He had some tough times too, but even from the get-go, they were very competitive. Had some bad luck against Ohio State and Michigan State, but he had good competitive teams.
Yeah, and you knew the system he was running. I mean, whether it was a year that they were not going to contend for the Big Ten, or it was the big years that they were good, you knew the system they were running. I don't know what the hell this team is doing. They're still trying to figure it out. So that's part of my thing with Sherrone Moore. How you kind of teed this whole thing up. Even if they do get Bryce Underwood, or even if they do get a top 5 recruiting class, what are they going to do? Who's going to develop them? Who's he going to throw to? And who's going to block for him? So it's just kind of all that kind of that stuff. Cause it was like, you knew with Harbaugh what he was going to do. Even like all the way back to Rich Rod, he didn't, you knew what system Rich Rod was running. Obviously it didn't go well, but with Sherrone Moore, you really just don't know what to expect out of him. So,
Yeah. And it's been disappointing, the whole, like we talked about the whole orgy thing. How on earth do you think every time you put him in there, you run the ball, that's going to work? You got to throw it once in a while. I mean, Tim Tebow, he'd throw the little jump pass, man, because he was a threat to run.
This is the time we mentioned single wing. Run the goddamn single wing, and at least we have something to laugh at every week. This is the worst. It can't be worse. This is the worst offense in the country. It seems like that's not a stretch. They are the worst power forward offense in the country.
Because at least the service academies, Army, Navy, they run their system perfectly. But they also hit a couple of deep balls too. They still at least throw the ball downfield, to keep the defense honest. Michigan's not even doing that.
That is truly mind-boggling that they don't take any shots.
Right.
Imagine being a defensive coordinator and you're like, basically you're defending in the red zone 24/7 against this offense. Just pin your ears back and run forward, and chances are you're going to make a tackle. It's I mean, holy shit. if we hit a deep bomb next week, even if we lost Northwestern, I would cheer it. That would mean
Right.
we're seeing some mistakes that we're making on film and we're correcting them. So that's where I'm at.
They basically, this is take care of Northwestern in 2 weeks, but you hear like leave it all out there type of thing. You better leave it all out there versus Ohio State.
Yeah.
Chuck it downfield, whatever trick plays you got in the bag, whatever, leave it all out there.
They should have no game plan for Northwestern. The entire next 2 weeks should be spent game planning they can win that game. As crazy as it is, we just saw it. They can play with anybody with this talent, with this defensive line. They can wreck any game.
Right.
In Ohio State, we talk about every week, they have issues, man. I really think that's going to be a good game. So put forth your best game plan. Spend 2 weeks working on it.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I hope you're right. I hope they do come to play that game because it'll be awful bad seeing them get pounded by Ohio State. But it's that kind of year. One final thing, guys. We are going a little long. I did tee it up a little bit. If you get a chance, rewatch the season ender of the last Yellowstone before you watch the new one.
Okay.
That's what I did. And the new episode dropped last night. I'm not going to give any spoiler alerts out other than to state Taylor Sheridan's return. He wrote a good script, and it's going to be a hell of a season. That's all I'm going to say.
So no spoilers.
No,
because you guys know I'm going to watch it, Jared. I don't know, you haven't really gotten into that show very much.
I was in it, and then I fell out. Maybe I'll try to get back into it.
But I saw people saying, so that's a good tip. I will go back and rewatch last season's ender because it is kind of like almost don't even remember how that ended.
Right.
But I saw some people. This isn't really a spoiler because we know the whole drama with Kevin Costner and stuff like that, and we were wondering like what's going to happen. I saw some people, so you don't have to spoil it, but I saw some people complaining about how they handled the Kevin Costner, John Dutton situation. So
that's kind of a spoiler right there. I wasn't even going to say anything.
But people know he's not in the new season, right?
Well, right. That's always been known that he wasn't in the new season. So, like, how were they going to handle that is kind of the question. So,
did you like it?
Did I like
how
it?
They handled that?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I thought it was okay. It especially when you watch the season ender of the previous season to get into this one, it makes sense. And I'll just say this: it was probably the only way they could have done it. Is what I would say. Yeah. So it's set up to be pretty good. Another good season.
I hope it's not like a corny, because he's such a badass in the show. I hope he doesn't get killed by someone trying to steal the ranch or something like that. It better be something like if they write him off it better be something that goes with his character because he's such a badass in the show.
I'm going to look up how he died, or I don't even know if he died. I'm going to assume he died. I don't know, but I don't. Yeah, I have a feeling they screwed it up. I'll take your word for it. You usually are right with your reviews, but something seems fishy. Well, there should have been a big send off last season, right?
Well,
that last episode should have been going viral.
At the end of last season, he was still going to come back.
I didn't know that he left him out to dry.
We have
talked about it.
Well, the big drama was his son is attorney general,
right?
And Costner's the governor, right? So they're going head to head. And at the season ender last year, the attorney general, his son, was impeaching him. So that kind of set the stage there for the start of this one. But there's all kinds of things going on. Gotcha. I won't spoil anything here.
All right.
But watch it. I'd watch it before you do get it spoiled.
Yeah, I'll definitely watch last season's first. Because I'm excited to watch how they tie it off. Because with this being the last season, at least of this, they might do their couple spin-offs or whatever.
Right.
They're gonna try to make this last season incredible for if anything, to kind of stick it to Kevin Costner if they have, if they want to do that. But
it would have been kind of funny. If his character just was dudded out, basically what I'm saying is, oh dude, you want to quit our show? We're gonna basically scrap everything that made your guy cool. We're gonna make him a clown, on his way out. I know they probably didn't do that because it ruined the show, but who is the main character? So going, is it Beth? Is kind of
Beth and Rip. Rip is a badass. Her husband, I love Rip, and Beth is classic too. And they have big parts. And I will say this about this episode. A lot of cowboying, a lot of good cowboying stuff too. So
They do those scenes right, and the scenery, it's amazing. I should give. I don't really remember why I fell out of love with the show, but I should get back into it.
Yeah.
I mean, there were some stretches where, admittedly, it was kind of the same thing every show. It was still really entertaining, and the writing was always good. And like you said, the scenery, Kevin Costner was awesome. Rip, everyone. But it was like every show. Oh, here comes a bunch more fights, and now they're at a bar fighting, and now they're over here. So sometimes it was like, all right, let's kind of move. Like, what's going to happen here? Like, let's move this along.
Should we get 3PP branded for life on here? Is that maybe the next step for our next re-up next year?
Does AZee branding do that?
I don't know. It was funny because you bring that up. They showed the recapping things. They showed one of the guys getting the brand with the Y. I was thinking, man, today's day and age, why not just get a tattoo?
I don't know. That's badass. That
is badass.
Got me on the show. The fact they have quote unquote branded men. That's badass, man.
It is cool.
That's the best part of the show.
It's too badass for me. That's all I can say. All right, let's call it a podcast, boys.
I'm very intrigued though, because
I would like your opinion. It's hard for me to say, trying not to give away spoilers. So,
and they drop it like it's every Sunday night, right?
Every Sunday night, yep, on Paramount.
Yep.
All right, let's call it a podcast. I want to thank again the good folks at Memorial Healthcare's Wellness Center for the month of November. All new veteran members will receive special discounts on their memberships. More info at memorialhealthcare.org and on the socials at Memorial Healthcare Wellness Center. Also want to thank our other partners, ALS of Michigan, AZee Branding Solutions, Jacobs Insurance Agency, Kori Shook & Associates Real Estate Services, Nelson House Funeral Homes, Rivals Taphouse and Grille, Success Group Mortgage and Servicing. By the way, Randy Woodworth down in Houston had some surgery. Everything, it sounds like, went pretty well. So get well soon, Randy. That's Jim's brother. Sure. And also want to thank Shiawassee County Fair. Thanks to Kendall Crockett, the head football coach of the Morrice Orioles, and the Z92.5 Game of the Week. Saturday, it'll be Casey and Bart on the road over at Fowler, as the Fowler Eagles will host Harbor Beach in a Division 8 regional. So that's it. Peace and love, everybody. Be kind. Try to get along. Thanks for listening.